Should network engineers learn Python? Probably. Let's talk about it. All right, Python, network programmability, DevNet, automation, it's all the rage these days in the networking world. Why? Why is it such a big deal? Well, let's think about this for a second. Pretty much every other aspect of IT has embraced automation in some sort of way. Software developers now love automation for monitoring their code on top of rapidly deploying instances of their code, and systems engineers work closely with them to load balance and deploy new instances of the applications too. I mean, PowerShell became a massive deal really quickly. PowerShell rolled out version 1 in 2006, but recently, under the new leadership in Microsoft, everything is now about open source, and .NET Core has led us to PowerShell Core, and now we can use PowerShell on any platform just like Python. So when we first start talking about should network engineers learn Python, the real question is, does it have to be Python? The answer to that is no. Pretty much any object-oriented programming language comes with the ability to work with REST APIs. It just so happens, though, that the networking community chose Python as their language of choice for a few different reasons. Let's talk about that. First up, one of the main reasons that Python was the go-to language is because Python is easy to learn. Python is a very clean language. It's the most human-readable, object-oriented language that there is. So the learning curve to getting up to speed on Python is a lot less than it is on other object-oriented programming languages. Now, to pause, that's not to say that learning Python is super easy. Any object-oriented language or any coding language in general, you need to have a reason to learn it. You need to have something that you're building along the way. Otherwise, it's easy to abandon learning Python. To be honest, I tried learning Python way back in the day, probably 6 or 7 years ago, and I gave up on it. And the language that I actually learned, my first object-oriented language, ended up being PowerShell, because I could immediately apply PowerShell to all of my systems administration and systems engineering tasks. So keep that in mind when you're learning. The good news is for network engineers, if you're going to be learning Python, you actually have something that you could probably apply it to right away, and that's going to be, well, network administration and network monitoring. Now, the second reason you would pick Python over any other languages is primarily because network engineers and network vendors have thrown their weight behind it too, and they've developed extensibility built on Python. What does that mean? That means that there are basically third-party plugins that you can bake into your Python that will be specific to the task you're trying to do. So if you're trying to work with, say, a Cisco device or a Juniper device, Cisco and Juniper and other sorts of third-party people out there in the world have published their own open source code that you can bake right into Python. You could just pull it down off of a repository and bake it right into Python, and all of a sudden you've got an easier way to write your code and interact with those third-party devices. Basically, long story short, your second reason is that you already have customized software solutions that you can download, put right into Python, and it'll just work out of the box. But the real question that you're really here to answer is, why do I need to learn network programmability and automation? Well, okay, here's a truthful fact. If you're a small shop, a small organization, you only have a few switches here and there, maybe a firewall, you might not need to learn network programmability and automation, to be honest. The only real scenario where I could see you diving into that is if you had a Meraki environment. Meraki has a great API that you can interface with and build some automation in it. But network programmability and automation really exists on iOS XE, the Nexus devices, DNA Center, and APIC. Those are data center technologies. It also exists in collaboration and security too. And of course, there's SD-WAN. But again, if you're a small organization, there might not be a huge need for it. But if you're a medium to large size organization, there's going to be immediate benefits that you can gain just in network monitoring alone. See, think about it this way. When you do a show IP interface brief or show running config or something like that, you get a somewhat human readable return back to you, right? And if you were to programmatically try and parse out the little bits of data that you were really looking for, well, that could be really, really difficult to do. You would have to be a master of regex. And let's be real, is anyone really a master of regex? I'm sure there's someone on YouTube that is, but come on, we're all Googling how to do this in regex, right? So the immediate benefit to using Python or anything else is the structured data responses and the ability to pull out the exact data that you need. And then when we apply automation and programmability to that, we can now monitor the specific data point and react to changing conditions immediately. We don't even have to do any interaction at all. We could deploy the automation and it'll just listen for events and make automated responses and changes on the fly. I love the example of if we have two WAN providers, one is a primary and the other one is a failover. The primary one, maybe we spend more money on it and we have more bandwidth and the ability to handle traffic. The backup, the failover WAN link is much slower. How do we handle a scenario where we've deployed new applications and new QoS policies and everything like that? What happens when the primary link goes down? We can have Python and network automation tools monitoring the status of our WAN links and the types of traffic that's going in and out, so that if there is an adverse condition, if the primary WAN link goes down or gets too clogged, we can automatically swap traffic over to the secondary WAN link, adjust QoS policies, adjust ACL rules, all of it scripted without us ever having to interact with the application at all. So let's bring it full circle. Should network engineers learn Python? The answer I'm still going to say is probably, because the shift in technologies right now, I mean, look at Cisco throwing all their weight behind the DevNet associate exam. The shift in technologies right now is moving towards faster automation, monitoring, reacting faster. And that's exactly what Python does for network engineers. It's just the exact same as PowerShell for systems administrators and systems engineers. And at the end of the day, learning something new has rarely hurt people in the technical world. So just setting yourself up for skills, just giving yourself the skills to take that leap into the next step of your career where you can use network programmability and automation, well, that can't be a bad thing. Okay, great. We know why we should learn Python. Now the next question is, how do we learn Python? How do we get started? Well, obviously, CBT Nuggets has got your back there. Not only are we recording the Cisco DevNet associated exam right now, which has Python modules built into it, but Ben Finkel already has an introductory course on getting started with Python now, and it's really good. It goes really deep. I've watched it myself, and I've gone through all the modules and did the code that follows along with it, and I highly recommend jumping on CBT Nuggets. Just try the 1-week trial and get started learning Python now so that when the DevNet content starts rolling out soon, you've already got a leg up. So thanks everyone for stopping by. Make sure you hit that subscribe button in the bottom corner, and I'll see you in the next one.